Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 12 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is the Villisca Axe Murder House. So before I get into the episode, as usual, I just want to say a couple things. Firstly, if you haven't already, please go check out the Patreon, patreon.com/whispersfrombelow. I'll talk about it a little bit more at the end, detail-y stuff, but it's super cool and you should go check it out. There's a bunch of different tiers and it's pretty awesome. Secondly, I am currently recording this episode at 5 in the morning, not because I woke up early, but because what is sleep? So if I sound delusional, I am. I did the research for this earlier today and I'm recording this really late at night because sleep is an illusion. So, yeah, get into it. The other thing is that this episode is relatively gruesome. And I would say that I don't go into too much detail about certain aspects of what happened in this house, but it is a real life event that happened. It's a true crime. If any sort of murder or anything like that is uncomfortable for you, I will see you next week. My younger listeners, I would say give it a little bit of a go. If anything starts to be uncomfortable, obviously please tune in next week and you don't need to listen to this week's episode. But yeah, I think that this episode will be okay for younger listeners. I don't think it's going to be too explicit or awful or terrible. But there are some darker topics in it. So I would say maybe not like too young of a listener. Anyway, semantics. Let's get into the episode. So, the Villisca Axe Murder House is a haunted location in Villisca, Iowa. Not only is this a haunted location, but the crime that spawned the hauntings is an unsolved crime. So, we've got it all. We've got it all in this episode. Not only is this like an unsolved mystery case, but it's a mass murder as well as creating a haunted location that like you can still visit today. It's pretty cool. And it's like a really popular topic, I found out. This is a side note before I get into too much detail, but this is apparently a really popular podcast episode. I was like doing research, because I like read about this at one point in school maybe or something, and I was like, this is kind of interesting, but I didn't know a lot about it. And I was doing a bunch of research and I was like, let's look at like pop culture references, like how is it referenced today, whatever. And it was like X amount of podcasts have just done episodes on this, podcasts that like I absolutely love. And I was like, that's so funny that I like missed this episode, but like I'm going to be one of those podcasters that does an episode on it now. But yeah, look it up, check it out. Every podcast is cool in its own right. Go check it out. But anyway, so it's an unsolved crime and a haunted location. What happened was that the 6 members of the Moore family, as well as 2 house guests, were killed by an axe wound to the head on June 9th, 1912. They were bludgeoned to death with an axe. 6 of the 8 people were children. So the eight people died, 2 of which were parents, 6 of which were under the age of 12. So just like kind of a sad end for the children. Maybe the parents were like assholey. I'm like not really sure. But anyway, so the parents were Josiah B., age 43. Oh, that rhymes. And Sarah, who was age 39. They had 4 children. Herman Montgomery, who was 11. Mary Catherine, who was 10. Arthur Boyd, who was 7. And Paul Vernon, who was 5. So, like, pretty young children, all things considered. The Moore family was very well known. They were an affluent, like a rich family. They people knew who they were, and not only did people know who they were, they liked them. They were a very likable family. They always did their work. They were very sweet. They organized like church functions. They were like upstanding citizens. Like people really loved the Moore family. And it helped that they also had money. So, do with that information what you will. Does that make it more tragic? Technically, yes, but also like shouldn't every death, well, whatever. That's not something we need to get into, but the idea of like, oh, well, when a rich person dies or when a famous person dies, it like matters more than like when a regular person dies, but whatever. So these people dying was like a tragedy to the community as well, is sort of what I'm getting at here. It wasn't just like to the immediate family, like it was a tragedy to like the community, the neighbors, the people around them. Um, they lived in a large white farmhouse, which, like I said earlier, it's still up. Like you can go visit it and like take tours of it and stuff. I think they have ghost tours now, so you can go like check that out at like midnight, go and like witching hour and stuff like that. Um, I wrote, please look up pictures. It's hella creepy. And what I will say is, like, I don't know if the structure of the farmhouse is inherently creepy, but what I do know is that because I know what happened in there, when I look at pictures of it, I am uncomfortable. But I don't know if that's because the building itself is unnerving looking or if it's because I know what happened there. Does that make sense? As to why it's like creepier to me. Look up pictures. It's pretty cool. So on the night of June 9th, 1912, two young girls, their name was Ina May and Lena Gertrude Stillinger. They were sisters. Ina was 8 years old and Lena was 12 years old. They spent the night at the Moore house. Catherine had invited them over. She was super excited. They're all like, similar ages. They were going to have like a cute little evening together. It was going to be great. They participated in the Children's Day program at the Presbyterian Church, which Sarah, the mother, had actually organized the event. Just to give you some background into sort of their lives, she like organized stuff like that like pretty frequently. So they got home around 21:45 or 2200. For those of you that don't use military time, that is 9:45 p.m. or 10 p.m., like within that area they got home. The next morning, Mary Peckham, who is like their neighbor, was very concerned about the family because they hadn't come outside to do their chores, and they were the type of people that like would always get up to go do their chores. There was like never a time where they wouldn't get up to go do their chores. You know what I mean? Like them not getting up early and doing what they need to do was like very alarming. Um, so she decided that she had to go check on them. And she went to check on them and knocked on the door, no response. Called for them, no response. And she said, I guess I'll just have to walk in. But the door was locked. And so she's like, this is weird. Like, why is the door locked and they're not awake and no one's answering me? Like, I have to figure this out. So she ended up calling Josiah's brother. And when Josiah's brother showed up to the house, his name is Ross, by the way, he did not get a response. He knocked, he called for them, he tried to open the door and it was locked. He even like shouted and yelled and screamed and didn't get a response. So he was like, something's totally off. I have to go see what's wrong. So luckily he had a copy of the key. So he unlocked the house and was like, great, I'm going to start in the guest bedroom. I'm going to walk through the parlor into the guest bedroom and just see how the girls are doing. So he went into the guest bedroom and found the bodies of Ina and Lena on the bed. He immediately called Henry, quote, Hank, unquote, Horton. So Henry Hank Horton. And Horton was Villisca's like primary peace officer. For those of you that don't know, a primary peace officer is basically like a sheriff, or like a lead detective. Like they're just kind of like the person that you go to with your issues, but like they're higher up. That's pretty much what it is. So they found out that the entire family had been killed by bludgeoning, and they found Josiah's axe bloody in the guest bedroom. So Josiah had an axe that they found at the scene of the crime, bloodied, but he was also dead. And there's like, just looking at the crime scene, there's absolutely no way that he would have been able to deal the damage that they dealt. And I'll explain this a little bit more so you'll understand why it's not physically possible for him to even be a suspect. Like, oh, maybe Josiah like lost it. There really isn't a possibility for that, and I'll explain that in a second. I don't know about you, but I personally hate having to go to the grocery store. It takes up so much of my day when I could be starting a new hobby with that time, like soap carving, or collecting the sick bags out of airplanes. With Instacart, it makes grocery shopping fast and easy, all while allowing me to stay in my underwear. Instacart allows you to order all of the things you usually get from your local stores, delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Not only that, but it will also give you smart suggestions for new items based off of your preferences, as well as highlight deals to help you save some money. The shoppers handpick perfect produce and make sure that your eggs get to you safely. You can get free delivery on your first order over $35 by following the link in the show notes. This also lets Instacart know that we sent you, and it helps support Whispers from Below. So if you hate grocery shopping as much as I do, try Instacart today and enjoy getting your groceries the easy way. So the doctors concluded that the murders happened between 0000 and 5 a.m. So like midnight and 5 a.m. around that time. They found 2 used cigarettes in the attic. So this sort of led investigators to believe that the killers or the killer, singular or plural, waited up there until the family was sleeping and then descended upon them while they were asleep. They started in the master bedroom by murdering Josiah and Sarah. Josiah ended up receiving the most wounds. They were so extensive on his face that they couldn't find his eyeballs. They were completely missing. It's also interesting to note that Josiah was the only one that was hit with the sharp end of the axe. Everybody else was hit with the butt of the axe and killed by bludgeoning to the head. He was cut apart by the axe. So this is where I would say, as someone who I consider myself a crime junkie and a relatively intelligent person, my first assumption would be that it was a very personal thing between whoever the killer or killers were and Josiah himself, because that is where most of their anger came out, was in Josiah himself. So I don't know if it had as much to do with the family as it did with Josiah. So I think the family and the poor guests were simply, I guess, like a means to an end. Like, he wanted to kill Josiah but couldn't do that and get away with it, so he just murdered all of them, like angry rampage style. But just interesting to note, he was the only one that was hit with the sharp end of the axe. So that's why, like, there's no way he could have done it to himself. Like, the amount of damage on his face, like, some of it happened post-mortem. There's no way he can do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way. After murdering the rest of the family, the killer, or killers, returned to beating up Josiah post-mortem, and they knocked over a shoe that had completely filled with blood, and so the shoe, like, spread blood all over the floor. He then went down to the guest bedroom. I say he. I feel like that's inappropriate. They then went down to the guest bedroom and murdered Ina and Lena. Investigators believe that all of the victims died while they were sleeping, except for Lena Stillinger. She had some defensive wounds on her arm, and she was laying, like, across the bed. Not, like, in the bed. Like, she was laying directly across it. So they think she's the only one that woke up, and therefore was the only one that put up a struggle. They also noticed that her nightgown was pushed up to her waist, and she had no undergarments on. So they think that she was possibly molested, or at least an attempt at sort of like a sexual assault, rape moment. Um, Something to keep in mind is that in this time period that we're talking about, like this isn't modern day where it's like, oh, well, like we can do like a post-mortem, like autopsy rape kit sort of scenario and like figure out what happened. They just didn't have the technology back then and the knowledge that we do now. That's the big thing. They didn't have the knowledge that we do now on how to sort of solve crimes like this. Stuff like this is not common back then. I think nowadays we're extremely desensitized to mass murdering due to shootings and guns and things like that. Um, I think that this is a much more like intimate thing. And also on top of that, this was a time period where that didn't happen. And these were rich people who were nice people. Like this doesn't happen to people like that. You know what I mean? Um, so just like a lot of stuff to like sort of keep in mind as we talk about this is like, it's a different time period. So like, please don't be like, well, it's stupid. They could have figured it out this way. Like they couldn't, they just did not have the capabilities yet to do so. So, as far as the case goes, there were many different suspects that surfaced, one of which was actually like a reverend, but none of them were convicted. George Kelly is like most people's like prime suspect for it, but he was tried 2 times for the crime, and the first trial ended in a hung jury, and the second trial ended in an acquittal. So, I don't normally talk about like the actual like legal stuff with cases because it doesn't interest me as much as the actual crime and the aftermath. But this was interesting to me. And for those of you that don't know, a hung jury just means that like the jury could not agree. They couldn't come to a unanimous conclusion. Like it was split half and half. Like he's guilty, he's not guilty. So it's a hung jury. And an acquittal basically means that you're not guilty. So he split people half and half and was like, oh no, he couldn't have done this. Maybe he did. And then in the next trial, everybody was like, no, it's not him. So this is like a completely unsolved crime. Like nobody knows who murdered these 8 people with an axe and like got away with it, which is just like wild to me. Because nowadays, if somebody murdered 1 person with an axe, we would have prints on the axe. We would have blood splatter patterns that would tell us how the fight went down. Do they have defensive wounds? Were they raped? Like there's so much more that we can do with technology now and with the knowledge that we have now of human anatomy, of how things differ. I guess like how a wound would differ depending on whether or not you're defending or you're tense or you're taken by surprise, like stuff like that. Like there are people who their entire job is just like interpreting a dead body and like what happened. And I just find stuff like that super fascinating. But at this time, they didn't have that. So this crime is like unsolved. Like nobody knows what happened. There are a ton of like paranormal TV shows that have covered this crime. They've gone to the house, they've done their little tests, they've all said it's like haunted. You can take tours of the home. I've said that I think once or twice now, but if you go to like if you Google like Villisca Axe Murder House, and scroll down a little bit, you will find like the website and you can like book tours of the house and stuff like that. Supposedly they kept pretty much everything intact. So it's very like, it's very from that time period. Like they lived on a farm and they had an outhouse, and that's like the house that you get when you walk into it. I don't know how creepy it would be to go or to be inside. There were 8 murders there, 6 of them were children. I mean, I'm sure that place is haunted as shit. But I have an issue with like, this is just a side note with me personally. I run into the problem of, is this spooky because I'm being told that it's spooky, or is it spooky because I'm genuinely unnerved being in this space? Because like when you go to Gettysburg, it's a little bit of a combination of both. Because people are like, Gettysburg is haunted as hell because everybody died there. And you're like, yeah, that's true. That's factual. So when you go there, you're like, ooh, whatever. But certain places in Gettysburg are unnerving. And like you might not even know why, but you're just kind of like tweaked out walking there. You're like, oh, I hate this. Like I don't feel comfortable. And so with places like this farmhouse, now that I know what's happened there, I wonder if I would have gone in blind had I like gone in just looking at pictures of it, knowing that it's like a ghosty house, and then like walking in, would I have felt as unnerved as I would walking into where a murder happened? I don't know. It's just me, like I don't know, like ghost people that are like, well, I went to this place because I got told it was haunted, and they told me I'd experience XYZ, and I totally did. Like that's obviously psychosomatic, and maybe that wasn't the right term. That's obviously like placebo. Like it's not actually happening, and your brain is triggering things happening because that's what you got told was like going to be the result. Um and that really bothers me. Whereas if you go in completely cold to something and then two of you come out with the same experience, I feel like that holds more weight. But whatever. What does it matter? I'm not a paranormal investigator, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, there's like tons of book references to this, and there are entire books about this crime. There are I already said it, but there's lots of great other horror podcasts. I think last podcast on the left or from the left did an episode on this. There's a bunch of them. You can check it out, and they're all pretty great. Um, and then I just wrote, obviously it's haunted. Like duh. It's like 100% haunted. There's no way that that place isn't haunted. Not only was there an unsolved crime there, which means that there's like no closure for the ghosts, the spirits that live there, but on top of that, that was a gruesome murder. Like, that was fucking brutal. Of course, they're still sitting there. Those bodies and those spirits are going to be there for a long, long time. I don't think they're going anywhere. I think even if the crime got solved at this point, they'd be like, whatever. I guess we're gonna chill out. They'd be like full Adam and Barbara and Beetlejuice, just like, this is our home now. Fuck off. Kindly fuck off. Like, please don't be here. I don't know. I just find this case so interesting. It just has so many layers to it. Like, apparently the person broke in and then waited in their attic and like smoked 2 cigarettes while waiting. Or alternatively, did somebody else, like, did Sarah snap and kill Josiah and everybody and then lay back down in the bed and bash herself in the head with an axe? Like, is that a possibility? But then how did the axe get into the guest room? There's just a lot that, like, people have speculated about it for a while, but, like, nothing adds up. And I love cases like that. I don't because I like to know things, but I know that, like, when I die, I'm sure that one of these cases, I'll, like, figure out the answer and be like, ugh, and then, like, disappear from the world. But, like, I don't know. I just think stuff like, obviously, I think stuff like this is fascinating. I've been making a podcast for almost a year about it. But I don't know, specifically like these unsolved cases that are so gruesome and popular. I think it's interesting to sort of take your own pick on like, okay, well, this is what I think happened. And then it leads to a lot of like great discussions between like-minded people about sort of these topics and like how they perceive the evidence or whatever. Anyway, if you want to have conversations like that, good segue, Justin. If you want to have conversations like that, you should sign up for the Patreon because on one of our tiers, you get a link to a Discord chat. And the Discord chat, I'm on it, and a bunch of other people are on it who listen to this show and absolutely love talking about the macabre, the spooky, the creepy, the weird, the gruesome, the gross. And it's pretty cool. So you should definitely go check it out. The first tier is $5. There's a $10 tier, $25 tier, a $50 tier, and a $100 tier. Each tier offers something cool and unique and different. You can get stickers. I believe that's at the $10 tier and up. You get a sticker every 3 months that is especially designed for Patreon patrons only. You cannot get it anywhere else. As you move higher up, there are customizable water bottles with your name on it, Whispers from Below logos, courtesy of the Sticker Bar Boutique, which is a fantastic company that you should go check out on Instagram or Facebook for all of your like custom print sort of needs. Like you want a t-shirt done a certain way, that's the place to go for it. You want a tumbler, like a water bottle done a certain way, that's the place to go for it with like really high quality stuff. So the Sticker Bar Boutique, please go check them out. On top of that, you also get a t-shirt at higher tiers. This is a baseball tee. It's really, really cute. It is also only available to those who are patrons. There's a Discord chat. You get voting power. So I'll put up like, hey, what do you guys want to see next week? And you'll be able to vote. And you'll have more power in sort of the content that you want to see, which I think is like super cool. Also, it's a way more direct line straight to me to tell me episode ideas and stuff like that. So please go check it out. My goal is to get 25 patrons before my 1 year mark, which is coming up in February. It's coming up very, very soon. So if you could please talk about this podcast with people, share the podcast with people, show them the Patreon. Even just a one-time donation of like $1 means like so much. It just means that you're enjoying the work and you want to see more out of it, because the more followers I get and the more things like that, the more awesome content I can pump out for you guys, and the more merch I can make, and the more I can expand and grow and create bigger and better things. I know I say this a lot, but I have really, really high hopes and big ideas for this podcast, but I need support for it to happen. So if you guys would share this podcast, it would mean the absolute world to me. Just even if you just shared it by word of mouth and then that person listens next week, if every single one of you does that, that literally doubles my listener count for the next week. So it just, yeah, if you could just share it. If you want to share it on social media, please tag me. You can tag at Whispers from Below, no spaces, no underscores, no nothing on Instagram or anything like that if you want to post. If you want to tag me, my personal account is JUTIN_geese, like the animal. It's basically just like makeup and my dog and my beautiful boyfriend. But if you're interested in my personal life or my personal views on anything, you can go follow me there. Please follow the Whispers from Below Instagram. The handle I already said, but it's Whispers from Below, no spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. I try to post there pretty frequently, though I have been very, very bad about it recently. My boyfriend and I just moved, and I just got a new job, and we're sort of trying to like balance like a lot of things at once. So I've been very inconsistent with how I'm posting on there, but I am going to get better. I usually try to post a couple times a week on there, as well as some cute story stuff. If you want to know more about the podcast, or you want a way to reach me to tell me about future episode ideas, you can always DM me on Instagram, but you can also go to my website, whispersfrombelow.com. You can download episodes there. We have merch. There's like bomber jackets, pillowcases, blankets, stickers, t-shirts, hats, mugs, everything under the sun that you could possibly want is on there, and it's all super cute. My favorite thing is the fanny pack. I think the fanny pack is just like my pride and joy. I think it's so great. So go check that out. But also there's a contact page. So if you want to reach me for any reason, you want to reach out with comments, questions, concerns, future episode ideas, just to say, hey, I like what you're doing and I think it's great. You can always use the contact page, and either way that you do it, I get a response on my phone. And I'm a Gen Z, so my phone is pretty much on me at all times. So I will most likely respond very, very quickly. Besides that, there's not a whole lot to talk about. This was a really interesting episode to research for and decide what juicy information to sort of leave out for you to find on your own and for you to discover. I don't want to taint this case with my views of who did what, because I think that this would be a fun conversation to have with people versus me being like, hey, this is what happened completely. Because I've done that in past episodes. Um, but it didn't seem right for this one. I don't know why, I can't explain it, but it just didn't seem right for this one. So let me know if you like that, where I sort of am less opinionated on the case and who I think did it and whatever. Let me know if that's something you like. I know that this is like a little bit of a shorter episode, but it's also like 5 a.m. and I'm very tired. Um, so I'm probably gonna go watch some spooky videos and then go to bed. But please remember, number one, axe murders are wild. Number two, so many haunted locations in the US, it's really horrifying, and they're all from like brutal murders. Like, chill. It's so unnecessary. And three, keep wearing a mask. Even though there's a vaccine, you have to get it to be safe. So please just continue being safe and intelligent about how you're taking care of yourself.